Hi boys and girls, and welcome to our Read Aloud. On the board here, I made a timeline. Now we've had number lines in math, and we know that the arrows mean that time continues that way and that way. I started our timeline with 1492, and the reason I did that is because much of the recorded history of America started around the time that Columbus got here. Now, the arrow still goes that way because the Native Americans had been here for hundreds of years. And so there's all kinds of history of America that was here and happening before Columbus. But if you are someone who is from another country, our families, obviously, I'm considered white. My family came from England and Ireland and Germany and all these places over in Europe. So they came to America even though they're from across the ocean. And if you are someone who is considered white, your family also. If you are someone who is considered brown or black, your family came to the United States at some point. They did not already live here. Unless you are fully Native American, your family at one point immigrated or came to America. But it all kind of started being recorded and understood at the time of Columbus. And that was 1492. Well, we're talking about Thanksgiving, which took place between Native Americans and the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims came to America in the year 1620. So 128 years after Christopher Columbus was here. I always feel a little cheated because in school when I was learning history as a kid, my teachers taught us about Columbus and then they taught us about the Pilgrims. And I just thought that they happened one right after another. But there's a whole 128 years. Lots of other people were traveling to the New World where we live between that time. The Pilgrims were another group of people who ended up coming to America. And the reason that they came here was because they had their own religion, but their king said you had to practice religion or go to the church that he wanted you to go to. And if you didn't, you could go to jail. So they left and came here so they could worship or have the kind of church that they wanted to have and be free to do that. Because where they were from, if they had stayed, they could have gone to jail for having their own church services. Our First Amendment in the United States of America gives us freedom of religion. And what that means is that you can go to whatever kind of church you want to. You can not go to church if you want to. Religion is your choice. You can choose to be Baptist or Catholic or Hindi or Muslim or what are some others? I feel like I'm forgetting. Buddhist or whatever you want to be. You get to choose. That is your right as an American citizen. And it's really important that we let other people choose as well. So, I got this book by Gail Gibbons called Thanksgiving Is. You know I love my Gail Gibbons. So let's read and find out what Thanksgiving is. Thanksgiving by Gail Gibbons. Thanksgiving is a holiday for giving thanks. In the United States, Thanksgiving is celebrated on the fourth Thursday of November. Thanksgiving is harvest celebrations of long ago. Now you remember that harvest means you brought in the crops. Here's some pictures. This is men. And the Chinese baked moon cakes to celebrate a harvest. Got other groups. It says thousands of years ago, people had celebrations to give thanks for bountiful, that means a lot, harvests. Egyptians praised their god Men, the god of plants and fertility. In China, the people honored the moon at harvest time because it appeared to be at its brightest and perfectly round. You've probably noticed our moon. It's harvest time, so our moon has been looking really big. That's not the reason why, but it does seem that way at harvest time. They baked moon cakes to celebrate a harvest. The Greeks worshipped their goddess of agriculture, Demeter. The Romans' goddess of agriculture was named Ceres. They offered the first foods from their harvest to her as thanks. You know, long, long ago, people couldn't just go to the grocery store and buy food. When it came to eating, they were pretty much responsible for growing their food or trading something for their food. So you can imagine that having a successful year of farming or gardening was really important to their survival. When it's December and it's too cold to grow new food, you have to have had a good harvest the previous fall and put food away so that you will have something to eat in the winter. So to have had a nice garden or a good farming year would have been really important to your survival. The ancient Jewish harvest festival called Sukkot was first celebrated thousands of years ago. Jews thanked God for his protection and for their food, as they still do today. During the Middle Ages, the farmers in England held festivals to celebrate the end of the harvest. The Middle Ages were from about 450 to about 1450. Thanksgiving is the Pilgrims. In September 1620, a group of 101 passengers sailed from Plymouth, England, in search of a new home. These men, women, and children were called pilgrims. They wanted the freedom to worship in their own way, which they had not been allowed to do. They crossed the Atlantic Ocean on a small ship called the Mayflower. Their voyage was difficult. They sailed through many storms. One passenger died, and a baby was born. At last, after a long voyage, they came ashore at what is now Plymouth, Massachusetts. So here's a map. It has the ocean, and here's Massachusetts. That's one of the United States now. And right here, this red dot is where they came ashore. The Pilgrims began to build homes. Winter came with its cold winds. The Pilgrims had little food to eat. Many of them died. So they got here right in the fall. So they really didn't have time to grow food. Thanksgiving is Native Americans. Two famous Indians who helped the settlers were Squanto and Massasoit. Massasoit. I don't know if I'm saying those right, by the way. When spring finally arrived, the Pilgrims were grateful. Indians taught them how to grow the foods that they themselves ate. Also, they taught the Pilgrims how to be better hunters. During the growing season, the crops grew and grew. The fall harvest was plentiful. The Pilgrims wanted to thank God for the abundance of food they would have for the coming winter. So if you imagine, this is a new world for the white men and women. And they can't go to the grocery. They have to hunt and they have to grow their food. So they were very lucky after having a really rough winter where many died that they were able to grow enough the next year. Thanksgiving is the first Thanksgiving. There was a great feast. The Indians were invited. It was the Pilgrims' first Thanksgiving, the fall of 1621. So they left and got here in 1620, and the next year would have been 1621. The first Thanksgiving lasted 3 days. So we only have 1 day. Theirs lasted 3 days. Thanksgiving is a holiday. In 1863, President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed the last Thursday of November to be Thanksgiving Day. This was the first nationally declared Thanksgiving Day for the United States. Then, in 1939, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt made a change and declared Thanksgiving Day to be the fourth Thursday of November. In Canada, Thanksgiving is celebrated on the second Monday of October. Thanksgiving has many symbols. There are Thanksgiving decorations. In many ways, our Thanksgiving celebrations remind us of the Pilgrims' Thanksgiving. There are pumpkins, turkeys, fall leaves, and other symbols gathered together to look like harvest time. Some homes are decorated. So here's Abe Lincoln, and here's Roosevelt. And here's some kids decorating. Thanksgiving is family and friends. Family and friends come together to share good times. It is a time for loving and sharing. Thanksgiving is a Thanksgiving feast. Tables are filled with many of the same foods the Pilgrims shared with the Indians. There is turkey, stuffing, cranberries, sweet potatoes, beans, squash, cornbread, and other good things to eat. Thanksgiving is Thanksgiving desserts too. There is pumpkin pie, mincemeat pie, bread pudding, baked apples, all kinds of treats. Thanksgiving is giving. Sometimes people send Thanksgiving cards. They may give plants or flowers when they visit others. Thanksgiving is games. Families and friends may play outside or go to a game. There are lots of football games on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is Thanksgiving plays. There are plays about the Pilgrims and the Indians who helped them. Back where I grew up, I taught at a school for a while, and our school used to have a big Thanksgiving play from the second graders every year, and then afterwards everybody would eat in our gym, and we would have a huge Thanksgiving feast together where we actually had turkey and stuffing and all the fixings. Our principal loved to do that, so every year we did that and had families come in and eat with us, and it was a lot of fun. Thanksgiving is parades. There are floats, bands, and big balloons. If you watch the Thanksgiving Day Parade, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, they have those huge balloons that fly over New York City. It's a really neat parade. Thanksgiving is sharing and remembering others. Thanksgiving is giving thanks for many blessings. It's pretty much right there in the name, Thanksgiving. You're giving thanks. It's a great time. There's some words that I think that are very important for us to learn. We've talked about harvest. That's when we go out and we pick or bring in the crops. Crops, that's what the farmer grows. But there are two other words that I want us to talk about. And the first one is native. And the second one is tradition. Native means from this place. I am native to Indiana. I am from Indiana. I was born here. I was raised here. I am a native of Indiana. The book that we read calls the people the Pilgrims met Indians. But we know that when Christopher Columbus arrived here, he called them Indians because he thought he was in the Indies. They are normally referred to in today's times as Native Americans. Native, they are from the Americas. Some of the foods that we see at Thanksgiving are also native to America. Cranberries are native to America, and pumpkins are native to America. Turkeys are native to America. You could have gone out and hunted turkey. Wild turkeys are everywhere in Indiana. So when something is native, it's from there. Now, I lived in Colorado for a while. I was not native of Colorado. I am native to Indiana. I had moved to Colorado. Tradition. A tradition is something that your family does or that people do every year. In my family, it is a tradition that we go to my grandma's house and eat turkey and have Thanksgiving dinner. That is a tradition that we have done for my entire life. We go to my grandma's house for Thanksgiving. That is our tradition. Some of the foods that we eat every year are pumpkin pie and turkey and dressing and mashed potatoes. And in my family, brown beans and cornbread are a tradition. That's probably not a tradition for everybody else, but my family was poor. They had big families. You feed a lot of kids with brown beans and cornbread for a cheap price. So we just grew up on brown beans and cornbread, and I love them. So we have the tradition that we always have brown beans and cornbread at every holiday. So that is one of my family's traditions. I'm sure your family has its own traditions too. Certain things that you do, certain things that you eat every year at the same time. That is a tradition. These words we're going to be talking about quite a bit over the next few weeks, and I'm hoping that you will understand them and add them to your vocabulary, your schema, so that when you see them, you understand what they mean. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.